Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder when I head out for a stroll and deliver an episode to you while I walk around. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, good morning, listeners. It is a gloomy Friday morning here in suburban Chicago, the last Friday of my semester. Today is normally the Arts and Media Festival day for my school. Unfortunately, of course, because of the pandemic, there's no festival. It's just an online thing. That said, there is an online thing, so I'm going to spend some time this morning watching some student work and enjoying what they've done. So, looking forward to that. On to the show. Today, I thought I would talk about 3 games that I've played recently. That's right, it's shooting from the hip, triple shot. To be honest, reader, I've found myself a little less motivated to make episodes lately. My gaming hasn't really slowed down a lot. I'm still playing plenty of games, but just the mix of games that I've been playing hasn't been super inspiring. I'm not finding Board Game Geek all that exciting right now. I've been on there quite a bit, of course, but the conversations haven't been too stimulating. So just letting you know that I'm aware the podcast has slowed down a little bit. And, when I have something to say, I certainly can use my morning walk to share it. I just haven't had a lot to say right now. And I don't want to make episodes where I don't have anything to say, just for the sake of making episodes. That was one of the decisions I made toward the end of season 1, is that I was just going to do the show when I felt like it, and kind of stick with that. So that's where we are in terms of the podcast. All right, on to our shooting from the hip triple shot. So the games I'm talking about today, one of these was played through Tabletop Simulator, although I do have a copy, and the other 2 were played at my table with my family. So after the episode I did on Matai, maybe 2 episodes ago, it got me really in a Carl Chuddik kind of mood. Carl Chuddik, of course, being the designer of Matai. And right around that time, someone posted on Facebook in one of the board game group things that they were going to play Glory to Rome. And I was like, woo, I have not played Glory to Rome in some time. I got to get on that. So I said, I would like to participate, please. And then a couple people dropped out, so it ended up just being a 3-person game, but it was quite fun. We played it twice, and so I thought I would start by sharing that. I was a little worried because anytime I've played a Carl Chuddik game before, the learning load is relatively high. It takes a fair amount of effort to figure out how the game works. But I would say Matai, being sort of Carl Chuddik's return to the same design space as Matai, actually ended up being pretty close. There's not a huge distinction between the work that Chuddik is doing in Matai and the work he did in Glory to Rome. So let's talk about it a little bit. Glory to Rome, the theme is you are one of the citizens of Rome who's been designated by Caesar to help rebuild Rome after one of the great conflagrations or sackings of Rome or something. Rome has been destroyed, and you're supposed to help rebuild it. The game uses this mechanism by which you follow other players' actions. So at the beginning of your turn, you're going to declare an action, and then the other players can follow it by playing a card of the same type, or 2 matching cards of a different type, or a wild card. When they declare to follow it, they're going to take the same action you took in turn sequence. When you take your action, there's a variety of different things you can do. And a lot of them involve the same sorts of things as Matai. You're making a building, or you're starting a building. This is one of the differences. Or you build a building from the middle of the table, and so on. One of the differences, when you build a building in Glory to Rome, you start the building, and then over turns you add stuff to it. In Matai, you have to complete the work all in one go, so it's a little bit different. But then you can get people who will help make your actions more powerful, and you can get a couple other things as well. There are minor tweaks that happen throughout the game, variations on the way it plays, so it's definitely not exactly Matai. I would say it's about a 90% overlap. So if you've played Matai and you want to try Glory to Rome, you're 90% of the way there. But it is important that you learn the Glory to Rome rules, and more importantly, that you have someone explain. Like, it would have worked better for me to learn it if someone had explained to me, given me the 3-minute overview of how you play Glory to Rome, and then been specific, here are the ways Glory to Rome is different from Matinai. Those differences sort of highlighted in that way would have made my learning Glory to Rome a lot easier. There were some things that I assumed would work one way, because that's how they work in Matinai, and they didn't. And that caused a little bit of confusion as I was playing, and I wouldn't have had that trouble if I'd had that start. That said, I didn't put a lot of energy into learning the game before we started, so that's on me. It was a really fun time. Feels very much like Matinai, and I like it quite a bit. I can see why people like it. I don't know that I like it better than Matinai. But this isn't an episode about Matinai. So one of the things that Glory to Rome has is there's a lot more player interaction. Not only are you taking turns based on what other people did and trying to maximize your turns based on what you think they're going to do, but you also are gaining things and taking things from them. There's a lot more interaction of just messing with each other's stuff. There are lots of cards that have crazy powers, just like in Matinai, and the art design is really nice. We were using, on Tabletop Simulator, the redesign that was used for the Glory to Rome Black Box Edition. This is also the design that I used to make my own print and play copy, which I have in my house. So, what else do I need to say about Glory to Rome? Definitely worth trying. If you think it sounds like something you'd enjoy, hit me up. I'd be happy to play it on Tabletop Simulator with you. Glory to Rome, Carl Chuddick. It stands up to what people say. It's a very good game. Really interesting. So the next game I want to talk about today, this is the Grant Rodiak game, SPQF. I think I've mentioned this a few times before, probably at the beginning of the month when I did the top of the stack. I mentioned SPQF as a game I was going to play this month that I had tried to play before. I believe I incorrectly said that SPQF had been rethemed Oath to be published by Leader Games. I was wrong. It's been rethemed Fort, and it will be published by Leader Games. But I'm not playing Fort either. I'm playing SPQF. So SPQF, the title comes from a play on a Roman phrase, which is in Latin. I don't know exactly what it means, but it's something like something glory to Rome. I think it might even mean glory to Rome. Give all glory to Rome. But the Latin phrase ends with an R. It's SPQR. And so in the game it's SPQF because all the characters are animals and it takes place in a forest. Haha. It's a pun. So in this game, like Glory to Rome, you are choosing to follow one another not. But there's a couple really interesting and unusual mechanisms in the game that I want to take a moment to talk about. So in this game, you have a hand of cards, and each one has a symbol on it, and it has one or two actions on it. On your turn, you can play one of these cards to do an action, and when you do it, you may play additional cards with the same symbols to quote-unquote follow that action, or to augment that action. So, like for instance, if you're going to do a gather action where you gain resources, if you have more cards with the same symbol, then you can gather more resources when you do your action. Your opponents can choose to follow the action that you're doing, and they follow that action by playing one card from their hand that matches that symbol. They cannot use their followers. They have these other cards, these helpers that you can add. They cannot use the helpers to continue that augment. And then you get to do the action that you set up to do. It might be gather resources. It might be to get a follower. It might be to raise the level of your civilization. In this game, you represent a little forest civilization, and for each level that you go up, you're able to store more resources and do more things, and you get more points. A big part of the game is just racing to get that civilization ramped up over the course of the game. So there's a lot of really interesting stuff happening in the game. You have a cool nuance between building your own engine and trying to get points or get toward the end of the game. Often you have to spend effort and resources to move forward toward the end of the game, or you could spend those effort and resources to get more stuff, which augments your ability to move toward the end of the game, right? Like a lot of tableau builders, there's a small engine component to it, but if you put very much energy into the engine component, then you'll lose, because you'll have an opponent who will push toward the end of the game, and they'll get those big points at the end of the game. There's also an element of gaining points for gathering cards with a certain symbol on them, and that helps as well. So most of what I've said there has a familiarity to Glory to Rome. It isn't exactly Glory to Rome. Obviously, slightly different mechanisms and slightly different outcomes. But the lead-follow thing feels very similar. Here's the big difference. After you take your action, you take the cards that you use to do your action, and you put them in your discard pile. Then, you look at your hand, and any cards that are left in your hand, some of them are starting cards that have a little S in the corner, and any starting cards that you had in your hand go in your discard pile. Any other cards that you had in your hand, which would be cards you bought from the market, go into what's called your trade row. And your trade row sits in front of your board. Then you get to buy a card from the market that's not your trade row. Actually, I think I might get this backwards. You might still have your hand and you buy a card and then you discard your hand. So you buy a card. When you buy a card, you can either buy it from the market in the middle. There's a market of 3 cards in the middle. Or from one of your opponent's trade rows. And then you put that card in your discard pile, and then you discard your hand. And any cards that were in your hand that are not starting cards go into your trade row, and another player could take them on their turn. So any cards that nobody buys over the course of a round will go back into your discard. But a big part of the game is taking cards that other people bought. And it's a really interesting ebb and flow, because the cards that go into your trade row are ones you didn't use. So you might have wanted to use them, but you only get to do one action each turn. So you might just have not been able to, or it wasn't ideal. But that means each round that you have cards that aren't starting cards in your hand, which is almost every round, you have to think really hard about, like, do I want to keep this card or not? If I want to keep it, I need to use it. Or put it in my reserve, or one of the, there's a couple other things you can do with it. But if you don't use it, it goes into the trade row and an opponent can take it. But the thing is, the game is designed around this mechanism. It's designed around the idea that you're going to be giving up a lot of cards, that your opponents will be taking cards sometimes. And I noticed a number of times in the forums that Grant Rodiak, the designer, says, don't worry about it. This game is designed around the taking of those cards. You're not going to lose the game because someone took your card. So that's a really interesting twist on a game, and not something I've seen before, I don't think. So, it is fun. A couple downsides. The graphic design is not super easy to read. The icons are not very iconic. They look more like tiny drawings, reminiscent of the ones from Argent the Consortium, the game from level 99. And that does make it a little bit harder to read or harder to understand. I'd also say it's not super intuitive. So, like, there's a little chart showing you what the different cards do, and I had to constantly refer to it the whole first game. Now, it's possible that on the third or fourth game I won't have to refer to it anymore, but it took a lot of that time. And part of that is the game strives to be language independent, so there's no words on the cards, I don't think. That said, I really liked it. My daughter really liked it. I'm looking forward to playing it again. I'm not going to go buy Fort because I like the SPQF version I have. And also now that's like, having a first pressing of a record or something. It's got some eliteness to it. And apparently Rodiak's policy with these sort of mini Kickstarters is he doesn't reprint them. So it was a one and done deal. So, but I'm glad to have it. I'm glad to have it off my shelf of opportunity. Looking forward to playing it again. So that's SPQF from Grant Rodiak. All right, the third game I want to talk about today is a game that I picked up last year at the Toggle Garage sale, or the Toggle board game sale, A friend had brought it to sell and no one bought it, and he had it marked at 15. And I said, oh, that's a fun game. He's like, you want to buy it? I'm like, how about $5? He said, $7? I said, okay. So for $7, I got Sentinels of the Multiverse. Sentinels of the Multiverse is a card game. It's a cooperative card game in which you are superheroes battling supervillains. This is the very first base game, so it doesn't have any of the expansions or anything. And we tried our first play, and I picked a character who's really hard to use, apparently. I picked one of the harder ones, but I really liked the first play. It was an interesting dynamic in which the team tries to work together to find the synergies between the different powers so that we can defeat the supervillain before he defeats us. It's all cards, which is an interesting element. All cards and tokens, lots and lots of tokens. So a couple of things about it. The way the game works, each player picks a superhero, and then you pick a supervillain. The supervillain has different powers that they can do. Oh, and you pick an environment, and each environment adds or subtracts or adds challenges or removes challenges from the environment, from the place you're playing. So each turn the villain goes, and then each hero takes a turn, and then the environment goes. There's very specific rules about how the cards interact, which allow you to make these amusing or really interesting chains of powers interplaying. In gameplay, it feels a little bit like a cooperative deck construction game, something like Marvel Champions, except you don't construct the decks, you just get the deck you get, which means it's been finely tuned to be an excellent deck for that character once you know how to pilot it. And that's where the fun of the game comes from, the fact that the game comes with, I think, 8 heroes and 4 villains, maybe 10 heroes, and on your turn the goal is to figure out how do the 3 heroes work together to defeat the villain. How do you anticipate what the villain's going to do? How do you ameliorate the damage they offer and add damage to them? It's very much a tactical puzzle. One of the fun things is that it does reward early play because you're getting a nicely tuned deck. You aren't learning to play with a bad deck. You're learning to play with a great deck. And so even when you screw up, maybe you're screwing up in a way that you still can see a glimmer of the hope there. So then when you come back for a second play, hopefully it'll be better. I say all that with the full acknowledgement that as a player, I've only played one game. And I enjoyed it, but I'm not sure we'll see how long it lasts as a long-term play thing. I could see myself slowly acquiring the expansions if they're available. I know that the game has gone out of print, so it might be one of those things where if we decide we like it, maybe I just seek out the mega box of everything. Or maybe I just look for people selling their collections off a piece at a time. The problem with that is I think it's going to be very hard to find the expansions by themselves. I suspect most people who have the expansions have the base game too, and they're not going to be interested in selling them piecemeal. So this may be a game where I get a taste of it and then we don't pursue it just because getting the whole thing would be very difficult and or expensive, and we have a lot of games to play. That said, I really enjoyed our first time to it. I played Absolute Zero, which is a character who uses frost and fire power. My wife played Ra, a character with ancient Egyptian superhero powers. And my daughter played Wraith, which is basically Lady Batman. She's a wealthy, super smart, technological fighter character. So definitely fits the archetype of Batman, except it's a lady. And we fought against Baron Blade, who was listed in the instructions as being the least complicated villain. We had a fair amount of start and stop as we tried to figure out how cards interacted and some of the things about how turn order goes. And we got a couple rules wrong. I had to look some things up. Ultimately, a pretty enjoyable game. And I'm looking forward to trying it again. I'm not sure if I want to try to play Absolute Zero again now that I've played him once and I kind of have a sense of how he works. Or if I want to switch to a different character to see what happens with that other character. So overall, a nice treat and fun to try. And also, one of the other games on my shelf of opportunity. That's 2 out of 4, people. We're on our way. This brings me to the end of the podcast for the day. I'm on my street heading home. So I'm looking forward to hearing what is new with you. Pop over to the Board Game Geek Guild 3269. We've been having a bit of a conversation on the top of the stack thread from last month. Head over to Board Game Arena or Boitaju or Yukata, where my username at all three is Wombat929, and invite me to a game. I'd be happy to play something with you. Even if I've never played it before, I'll go read the rules. You can kick my butt. It'd be great. And I hope that you are doing your best to stay in a mentally good place, in a physically good place, as best you can given the trying times we have. I miss you all, and I hope I will be back soon when I have something more to talk about. Okay, that's the end of my podcast today, so thanks for joining me, and I hope that your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Bye-bye.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.